in past lessons, we talked about the seal, trumpet, and bowl judgments advancing time chronologically. I don't want to visit that tonight, but yeah, will always be one of my favorite lessons. But chapters 12 through 14 pause time, and we've been in the middle of that pause, and now we're going to chapter 14. We're progressing rapidly, as you well know. And but those chapters cover important characters and events, and in those chapters you can jump back to something that you've already gone over just to put in some more details. And in this case, this chapter jumps all over the place, so it's a little bit more difficult. But we're not going to get into all of that tonight because we don't have time. But we are going to go ahead and so if we talk about just chapter 12, let's just remember the main characters. You remember? Chapter 12.
The woman and the dragon.
Yep. A woman who is
Israel.
Yep. And the dragon who is Yep. Who else are main characters in that chapter?
Would it be,
Huh?
would it be Herod?
Well, Herod is a main. That's true because Herod is discussed there, not by name. Is that correct, spelling?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
No.
thank you. I need a spell checker the older I get. Okay, who else? Anything else in chapter 12 that we covered?
Well, Jesus, right? They brought
Yep,
to a
Jesus is in there. Yep, that's always the right answer. Where's Jared when you need him?
Was the beast?
Yeah, the war. There's a war in heaven between Michael and his angels and yeah. Okay, so those are the main characters of that chapter, and we know that covers a lot of time. And there is, we'll see in one verse in particular, you have a big jump in time, and it's two sentences in the same verse. Oh, you must have heard your ears burning. But anyway, okay, how about chapter 13?
Jesus. How did we know?
Exactly. You're a little late, but somebody
was
helped
right.
you out.
I'm
He was
never-
right, somebody helped you out.
I'm never late for
You were
Jesus.
yeah. All right,
Jesus is
what
always on time.
All right, so what about chapter 13? And we just got through that chapter, spent a couple of weeks there. Who are the main
False
characters?
prophet.
Yep, we got the false prophet. Who else?
Do you have the mouthy horn? Is he a character?
Okay. Yep, he's a character in there. It's not what he's called there, but when we compared him to Daniel, he's there. So we've got the Antichrist, okay? Who else did we discuss it or talk about in chapter 13? Or event. We looked at something else and another personality.
The lesser beast.
Okay, that's the false prophet.
Okay.
So we've got two of the three characters that are significant that chapter addresses.
Talking about the beast.
The Antichrist?
We got those.
Oh, the mouthy horn. Okay.
Yep.
Jesus.
There you go. Yep. Nice try.
Jesus is still in there too.
Well, he is, but he's actually coming. Okay. So we got the Satan, and then what else was the big topic in that chapter?
Receive the mark.
Yep, you've got the mark, and again, we talked about the fact that people spend a lot of time focusing on that, trying to understand it, and the point is that those people will understand it during that time frame. And then we also had one other thing that I think we should be reminded of here. Significant thing that chapter discusses.
The breaking of the.
Is it one of the beasts?
Is it the great signs?
Is it one of the beasts come back to life?
Deadly wound was.
Well, that is, yeah,
that's
the deadly
that's
wound
the
that was
one
healed
here.
is in that chapter, so you get that is true, that is in that chapter.
The end of the 3.5 years.
Okay, this is
talking
3.5 years,
Are you
the
talking
middle
about
of the
image?
3.5 years is when that event takes place. What?
Are you talking about the image that was made?
Well, there was an image that was made, and what had to happen? They had to do what?
Worship it.
Yeah, they had to worship it, or
Be killed.
yeah, and get into that next week also in this chapter, even though we read it last week. The last thing I just wanted to point out here is that we get a glimpse of what the government is like at that time. There's a consolidation of government.
World government, yeah.
Okay, so this is
But
where,
the Antichrist does that.
yes, and the false prophet.
And yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so in chapter 14, we are gonna look at Jared.
Jesus.
There you go.
J-E-S-U-S.
Okay, thank you.
I got you.
Well,
Got the
that's
spell
with a
check
capital
going.
J.
Okay, so we got Jesus in this 14th chapter. Why do you, it's actually the victory of Jesus. And isn't it interesting when we look at these chapters and then we come to this? What's interesting about that?
Interesting. What was the question?
Can I get it put in a sentence?
What's interesting about what?
Well, what's interesting about these two chapters, and then on the heels of these two chapters, we've got this right here. And again, we're going to look at the first 5 verses. I'm just throwing it out there for a conversation, even though we haven't looked into those verses.
He allowed everything to happen.
Okay, he did allow everything to happen. And
Well, it
shows-
starts out with him stand with Jesus on
Robin.
Mount Zion with the 144,000 receiving the mark of God.
yeah, so Jesus, and we're going to read that in just one second, but Jesus is in, that's the victory with the 144,000. Okay, that's what we're going to read. But why would this be like a significant
Is
thing?
it like hope versus the doom and gloom of
There
the
you
other
go.
two chapters?
There you go. This is what they're, and you know, if somebody is reading that, including these 144,000 people that are living through this nightmare, this is an absolute worldwide nightmare. And, you know, it just is. And then, so God here is putting this chapter with this information, with Jesus and the victory of Jesus right here. Now, when does that victory of Jesus actually take place in the book?
The cross.
It does, that's true, but in the book, when does that victory take place?
When Jesus comes back to
22.
earth and banishes Satan to the pit.
Yeah, it's 19. We haven't gotten there, but it is 19. That's when Jesus comes back. And so this is it's jumping, again, we're going to see this chapter jump all over the place, okay? And so we are seeing this point in time, this place where, hey, there's something good after all the bad. And that good is permanent, and we're going to see that. Okay, I want to talk about let's read verses 1 through 3. We can skip 1 because Robin already read it. I'm joking. Let's read 1 through 3.
And I looked, and behold, the Lamb was standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his name and the name of his Father written on their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven like the sound of many waters, and like the sound of loud thunder, and the voice which I heard was like the sound of harpists playing on the harps. And they sang a new song before the throne and before the 4 living creatures and the elders, and no one could learn the song except the 144,000 who had been purchased from the earth.
Okay, so the 144,000, this is the 3rd time that we have heard of them in the book of Revelation. We want to go back, we want to read the first time, and that is chapter 7 verses, well, it's really 1 through 8, but we're not going to read all of it, okay? But let's go back to chapter 7, let's read 1 through 3.
After these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, on the sea, or on any tree. Then I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was granted to harm the earth and the sea, saying, Do not harm the earth, the sea, or the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God on their foreheads.
And then read 4.
And I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel were sealed.
Okay, and then the next 3 verses do what? Do you remember what the next 3 verses do?
Describe where the people come from. what
Yeah,
tribes.
so 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes is, I'm really good at math, equals 144,000. Okay, so what do we find out about those 144,000 in those verses? What do we find out about them?
They're protected.
They're,
Yeah.
okay, they're
Sealed.
sealed, so there's protection. Okay, and then we do know, as we said, that they are, what is their nationality?
They're Jewish.
Yeah.
They're
They are
Jews.
Jews. Okay, let's see, and then the next time, the only other time besides this that they're talked about is chapter 9, verse 4. And in chapter 9, what's happening is, this is where Satan has the key to the abyss, and he opens it and lets the demons out. But before he lets those demons out, what do we see in verse 4 of chapter 9? They're talked about just briefly there.
They're sealed on their heads, on their foreheads.
Okay,
And they're commanded not to harm the grass or green thing, any tree.
yeah, and and if we go through and read the rest of this chapter, we're gonna find that do you remember any details about this 5th trumpet being blown? And what happens when those demons come out of the abyss?
Torture everybody.
Yeah, they torture everybody. But what,
Except the 140.
yes, except for the 144,000, and they torment them. We're told how long they torment them, and people are so tormented they can't even die.
They seek death and cannot find
Yes, and how long are they tormented?
5 months.
Yeah, so we do know that time frame of that, and we're not always given a time frame, but we do know that is what happens with that 5th trumpet. Okay, then go back to chapter 14. No, I lied.
It's not very nice.
I know. So what I want to do is, okay, so the 144,000, yes, I do want to look there. Okay, when we look here at chapter 14, those first 3 verses, where do we see the 144,000?
Mount Zion.
Okay, Mount Zion. Okay, and we're going to talk about what that is. Okay, but we also see the 144,000 talked about toward the end of verse 3. And what does that sound like?
Verse 3.
Heaven.
It sounds like heaven. And they're mentioned because what does it say about them?
Standing before the throne.
Okay. Okay.
Singing songs.
But only they can understand.
Right, and that's actually a critical thing in trying to understand. Okay, so we've got the 144,000, and they're either located where?
In the Bible.
They are in the Bible. Thank you, Jared.
No problem.
On earth or in heaven.
Yes, that's exactly right. They are located.
It says before the throne, before the 4 living creatures and the elders, which would indicate heaven.
Yep, so we've got an indication they're on earth. We've got an indication that potentially they're in heaven. So it's kind of confusing. And again, this is a simple passage, couple of verses, and you go, I'm trying to make sense out of that. And that's just throughout the entire book. So let's turn, first of all, let's find out on earth, where are they standing? What's Mount Zion? And let's read that in 2 Samuel 5, 6 through 7. What do we find out?
The king and his men marched to Jerusalem to attack the Jebusites who lived there.
Who's he?
The king,
Yeah, who is that?
is
David.
it Sam-
Yeah, it's David.
David.
Okay, so what she's reading it about is David. Okay, and what do we find out about David?
The Jebusites said to David, "You will not get in here. Even the blind and the lame can ward you off." They thought, wait, is that right?
It doesn't sound right, but I could be wrong.
Ooh, The king and his men marched to Jerusalem to attack the Jebusites who lived there. The Jebusites said to David, "You will not get in here. Even the blind and the lame can ward you off." They thought, "David cannot get in here." You can interrupt.
It's
David
been said.
captured the stronghold.
Nevertheless, David captured the fortress of
That is
Zion.
the
There you go, there you go, thanks.
Read one more.
So one more verse, I'm sorry. Okay, and what do you find out in that next, Nate read it, what does it say?
Nevertheless, David captured the fortress of Zion,
Okay,
which is the city of David.
okay, what's the city of David?
Fortress
Yep.
of Zion.
It is Jerusalem. Okay, so let's read Psalm, I think it's Psalm 2, right? Is that the next one? Maybe that one is correct. Psalm 2, 6 through 8. What do we find out there? And again, we're trying to find out where Zion is. Right there we see the city of David is Jerusalem. But what do we see here in Psalm 2, 6 through 8?
I've installed my king on Zion, my holy mountain. I will proclaim the Lord's decree. He said to me, "You are my son. Today I have become your father. Ask me, and I will make the nations your inheritance, the ends of the earth your possessions." 9 as well.
You can, yes, 9 as well.
You will break them with a rod of iron. You will dash them to pieces like pottery.
Okay, and if we would look and look at that verse in Psalms, we would find out that that does parallel verses in Revelation and where we're going. We haven't, but we find that what is described, how's Mount Zion described there?
Holy mountain.
Oh, holy mountain, okay. And then, is it Zechariah?
Zechariah 14, 1 through 4.
And this is describing the second coming, okay? This is what is being described here. Let's see what we find out there.
Behold, the day of the Lord is coming, and your spoil will be divided in your midst. For I will gather all of the nations to battle against Jerusalem. The city shall be taken, the houses rifled, and the women ravished. Half of the city shall go into captivity, but the remnant of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Then the Lord will go forth and fight against those nations, as he fights in the day of battle. And that day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, which faces Jerusalem on the east. And the Mount of Olives shall be split in two, from east to west, making a very large valley. Half of the mountain shall move towards the north, and half of it towards the south.
Okay, so what's this described at that point in time when Jesus comes back to the earth? What's described there?
Let the mountain break apart.
There will
Yes, the mountain will break apart when he stands on the mountain.
split, yes.
Stands on Mount of Olives.
Like whenever the curtain was torn in two.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I've never thought about it that way. That's interesting. Okay.
Just a thought.
The triumphant.
Yeah.
I got you. I always think that him standing on the Mount of Olives, this is where he was in the garden when he prayed and asked God to remove. If there's any other way, and I don't have to go through this, please take this away from me. And this is where he was. And it's like this is a victory on the heels of that moment in the exact same place. And I think
That was
that's,
his favorite place to go
it was. It
for
was.
solitude and viewing the city and getting
Yeah.
away from everybody.
It was. It's also where he ascended from.
And where he was captured to go to the crucifixion.
Yes, it was.
So it's all focused on
It's a
that
very significant location. So based on this, and then what else? What do we see at the end of? Look at verse 3. What do we see in verse 3? That a significant event going on when he comes back.
The Lord.
The
To go
Lord
out
will
and
go
fight.
forth and fight against those nations.
Yep, and and what is that war?
Armageddon.
Yep, it's future. And Armageddon is the war. We haven't talked about it yet. We will talk about it. And so, if you had to say, okay, the 144,000, they are, how are they described in Revelation 14? They are where?
In heaven.
They're on Mount Zion with him.
Mount Zion, and
Or the throne.
okay, Mount Zion, and what is the rest? What's happening on
They're
Mount
before
Zion?
the throne.
On Mount Zion,
It's splitting.
what's? There's a descriptive word.
They're sealed.
They are sealed. That's true.
So is this
For the verse.
chapter 14?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're singing a song that nobody else.
Well, we're not there yet. But look, and I looked, and behold, the Lamb was standing on Mount Zion. So we know the Lamb is standing on Mount Zion. Sounds a lot like that, right? Okay. So, but we also have where there sounds like they're where?
In
In
heaven.
heaven. Okay. So let's
So
read.
it could be all the places.
Yeah, well, we'll look at it here in just a
But if he's standing on Mount Zion,
Uh-huh.
and the Mount Zion is in Jerusalem, so is it talking about him standing on Mount Zion when that splits, like Mount of Olives? So is that Mount Zion?
That is Mount
The
Zion.
Mount of Olives.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not just Jerusalem.
No, but it is on. It says
Yeah.
in the descriptions on the east side of Jerusalem. Okay, so let's read this. Okay, let's read Hebrews 12, 22 through 24.
But you have come to Mount Zion, to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem. You have come to thousands upon thousands of angels in joyful assembly, to the church of the firstborn, whose names are written in heaven. You have come to God, the judge of all, to the spirits of the righteousness, or to the righteous made perfect, to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel.
Okay, so at the beginning, what was described at the beginning of those verses?
You have come to Mount Zion and to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem.
Yeah. So there is a heavenly Jerusalem. Heavenly Jerusalem. Okay, so, and we see that they're standing with Jesus here, but we also see that there's a heavenly Jerusalem, and in verse 3 we see that they can sing this song that's being sung in heaven. Okay? So that's where the confusion is, and you're going to find that interpretations are that it's either this or it's this. Okay? You're going to find that.
Could it be their bodies are down here on earth, but their spirit is up in heaven?
Well, that's a good question. Okay, so that answer goes to my next question, and is if they are in heaven, then what is true of the 144,000? They've died.
Or been raptured.
Or been raptured. Okay?
Basically, there's no answers.
Well, but if this is true and they're in heaven, then they have died, and or they were raptured, and that's
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm really not being smart.
sure you're not.
How do you know this is the 144,000?
That's a question too. People ask. That's okay. So let me.
I mean, the way I interpret it, just reading it, is that, I mean, that could be anybody that's in heaven who has accepted Christ.
Okay.
Because, I mean, it just says whose names are written in heaven.
And you will find some interpretations say that. It's a different number of people, okay? But what information do we have about that 144,000 that is significant to this group of people? That is also described in chapter 14. Exactly.
What's
There's
your name?
God's name is on their forehead, their seal, and we've seen that in the other two previous references. So, yeah, somebody may say that it's not the same 144,000, but why would God make a point of saying 3 times? And that's a unique number and defining what that number, where those people come from, and they have a significant role as Jews. So I think, to me, the fact that they're continuing to be described as being sealed and the same number, and then here we see them standing with Jesus. And each time they're mentioned in Revelation, we see that number and that they're sealed.
Well, what it's saying, and I may be wrong, but it's saying you have come to, is that the
Where are
104 on
Verse
Hebrews
22.
12:22?
Okay, go ahead.
So is that you, the 144,000?
Not necessarily, but no, that's
So
not a
who is
reference.
it?
But it's a reference to the fact that there is a heavenly
Heavenly
Jerusalem, and it's also called Mount Zion. So there's reasons that people look at it that way. Okay? So as Elaine said, if there's 2 options then, and that is the 144,000 have either been raptured or have died. And we're seeing them in heaven. Okay? But let's go back to chapter 14, and let's look at,
I think it's important to mention that he's talked about these 144,000, they're gonna be protected, and they're gonna live through the entirety of the tribulation, and now they're coming to a point where Jesus is gonna do this victorious thing here. And so I think it's important to realize that it's gotta be the same people, because he's been telling us about these people.
right.
And this is what all these chapters are about, is this tribulation time.
Right, and we're getting a glimpse of his second coming. We're not there yet in the book, but we're getting a glimpse of his second coming. It's coming. And again, in these chapters where there's a pause in time, he's jumping all over the place, adding additional details. So this section, if we were going to put it in time, we would put it in chapter 19, when Jesus' second coming actually takes place when we read it. But that's not how God chose to write the book. And so, but what we do see, as you said, Elaine, is that these 144,000 have been talked about in multiple places, and that they are sealed, they are protected. We see all of them standing with Jesus on Mount Zion.
Isn't the confusion or part of it because of our perception of space and time?
I think part of it is true.
I mean, I learned that by watching documentaries on Star Trek.
Okay, well, thank you.
But you never can contain space and time.
That is true.
And God might, I mean, honestly.
Now we're not gonna start talking about Star Trek. He gets the MH, but he doesn't get the Star Trek thing. But he gets the mouthy horn, but it's true. I think that is what makes it confusing. That's why we're walking through this. So if you look at, say that the 144,000 are standing on earth, then who's singing the new song in heaven? If it's not them, who's singing the new song? Let's go back and let's read 2 and 3.
Are we back in chapter 14?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Then I heard a voice from heaven like the sound of many waters, and like the sound of loud thunder. And the voice which I heard was like the sound of harpists playing on their harps. And they sang a new song before the throne, and before the 4 living creatures and the elders. And no one could learn the song except the 144,000 who had been purchased from the earth.
Okay, how are the 144,000 described in relationship to that song?
Set aside.
They're the only ones that can learn it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's an important distinction there. They're the only ones that can learn it. Now, but someone is singing it, right? Who's singing it?
The 144,000. Because they're the only ones who can learn it.
Jesus.
Huh?
Somebody's gotta be teaching it to them.
Yeah, somebody's gonna be teaching it to them, but look at the context and who is the they?
The four living creatures, the elders.
They are there, so we know they're in heaven, but who's the they? Yeah, the harpists are actually the they that are singing. But what we find about those people, those harpists, or whoever's in heaven, okay, we're gonna go farther down that road, so they know the song, they're singing it, and these 144,000 are the only ones who can learn, okay? But before we go there, I want you to look at, let's look at Revelation.
Before you move on, is there
Yeah.
any significance to the fact that the 144,000 are those who had been purchased from the earth?
Well, yeah, redeemed, purchased, that means they are believers. They've
Well,
been bought.
they were sealed, but
Yes,
I think what Elaine's saying is the 144,000 who had been redeemed, so maybe they have been essentially raptured at this point. So
Well,
like this
but-
is,
but redeemed means to buy, to own, and that is a salvation.
And they were
word.
already marked.
well,
as God's.
that was done when they were sealed, but maybe,
Yeah, but that-
maybe, I mean, this is just
Yeah,
semantics,
So-
but maybe they're saying that they have been now fully purchased.
and what that word means is to own, purchased, own, and it always means that. It means that in this, because I looked at the word in this, and so it's God's own, and that's the word he uses when he died on the cross to redeem people, to purchase their life. And that's what that word means. It's really a salvation
It
word.
wasn't like he went and paid money for it. They sell the act of his crucifixion was a purchase. It wasn't monetarily. It wasn't
Right.
like it was just like that's what they're talking about.
Right, exactly.
The act of redemption through blood.
Yes, and that is what that word means there. And whether it always means that, I don't know. But it is the word that is what that word means there. So let's go back to Revelation 6:9, and we're looking at potentially other people that could be in heaven that are potentially singing this song and may shed some light on why the 144,000 are people that can sing it, or learn it, excuse me. So let's look, what do we find in verse 9, chapter 6, verse 9.
When he opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain because of the word of God and the testimony they had maintained.
Okay, so where are they?
In the altar before the.
Okay, and then let's look at 7:13 through 15. And this is on the heels of the description of the 144,000. And what do we see in 7:13 through 15?
Then one of the elders asked me, "These in white robes, who are they, and where did they come from?"
And through 15.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
I answered, "Sir, you know." And he said, "These are they who have come out of the great tribulation. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Therefore they are before the throne of God and serve him day and night in his temple. And who sits on the throne will shelter them with his presence."
And then look at verse 11. Where are they? Who else is there before the throne?
The ones that were
All the
slain.
angels.
Yep, the angels, all the ones that were slain. Who else?
The elders and the
The elders and the four living creatures. So we look at that and we think about the martyred people from the tribulation are at least in that place that's being described. Now, if you think about the 144,000 and you think about the martyrs, what is true of both groups of people?
They're killed for their faith.
They were killed for their faith. The ones that are martyred were killed for their faith.
Is it just the martyrs that were killed during the tribulation, or is it all the martyrs?
It's just the
Since-
martyrs that are killed during the tribulation. But what would be true of both groups of people?
That they've gone through the tribulation.
They have. And there's no other time in history that is like it. So, again, I can't be emphatic and say this is absolutely the only way that this is possible to look at that, because that's not true. Some people think that they're in heaven, and some people think that they're on earth. And they think that they're on earth standing because they're sealed, and we see them go all the way and protected all the way through the tribulation, because they are sharing what? What are they sharing?
The gospel.
The gospel, okay? Then there are those that think that they had to have been raptured, they had to have been killed. Now, let me see, I'm ahead of myself a little bit.
We can see how they were killed if they're protected. They've got the mark of God.
We got it, yeah.
They are, but at the end they're not, right?
Well, but here they are, they're described as being sealed here,
It's like
there's
the Jesus' bags,
144,000. Yep,
That's why I said they raptured.
and that is what some people will think. But here we have them standing with Jesus
Sure.
on the Mount of Olives, okay? And we
I guess
have,
if Jesus comes back and they're there, then he's protecting them still.
yeah, well, that could be possible too. But
Because
we're
if I
just
was
given these few little screenshots, basically, of information and doing the best that we can of putting it together with other references in the Bible. So let's turn to, and you said it, but let's read Matthew 24, 21, and 22. And why are they the only ones that can learn it? And potentially it is those martyrs during the tribulation that are singing it with the harpists. Okay, what do we see in Matthew 24, 21, and 22?
For at the time there will be great distress, the kind that hasn't taken place from the beginning of the world until now, and never will again. Unless those days were cut short, no one would be saved, but those days will be cut short because of the elect.
That's how awful this time frame is of the last 3.5 years of the tribulation. It is so bad that who's ever living during that time, Jesus says what?
Everybody would die.
Everybody would die. And it's so severe, so intense, your persecution against a Christian. What does he say?
Cut short the time
Yeah, for
the sake of the elect.
yeah. Okay,
So is the elect the 144,000, or is that anyone who's converted?
we don't
I'd say it would
know.
be both.
Yeah, it would be both. We don't know. We can't go, well, it's just this. Maybe, but it would be both based on the information that we have. Okay? All right, so now it's also important to say about the 144,000, if they're on earth, how would they connect to the song in heaven? And they're not there, and they're not singing it. How would they connect to the song based on the information that we have?
Is this the point where heaven has come down?
That's what I was thinking too.
To be honest with you, we don't know, but we do know they're the only ones that can learn it, and the ones that are singing it, and they have a unique tie, most likely because they both groups of people have at least in part endured the tribulation. Okay, but it could be that they actually hear it and can learn it and can sing it, that there's that interaction between heaven and earth. That's a possibility. It could be that we just don't know. At the end of the day, we don't know. And again, it's just kind of like we look through a glass kind of faith, like it's mirrored or whatever. We just don't get every detail. But at least these are things that we can think about. Now, are the 144,000 standing with the Lamb, or have they been raptured and martyred?
either way, they're standing with the Lamb.
Well,
It says
okay.
so.
Yeah.
Yes.
True. It's like-
It just depends on where he's standing.
Yeah, that was a trick question. I
Yes,
got
it
you.
is, but you answered it, so
So if
we're
it's
good.
standing on Mount Zion, the Mount Zion that's Mount of Olives, then that would be there. But if it's Mount Zion in heaven, it'll be here. But they're standing. It doesn't matter which one of those. He's there standing with them.
True, but if for our sake, and we're just trying to understand this, for our sake, how would you kind of look at that and go, here's where I think they were, and why?
So when they learned the song, where were they?
It depends on whether you think that they're
Okay,
in
I
heaven
have
singing.
a quick question, and it may just because I need to be, have a quick refresher.
Okay,
I remember at some point we were talking about, with Jesus coming out, that the heavens were rolled back.
chapter 6.
So that you could see
Uh-huh,
from earth the heavens.
uh-huh.
So, which is it then? I mean, because even if they were standing on earth, they could still see heaven. I mean, because
Well, but Jesus is with them, but that's true in chapter
And that's
6,
right.
and we also see another place where the Ark of the Covenant, you can see that in heaven. So is that a situation that maybe applies to this? We don't know, because we're not told that, but we do know that there's a unique tie to whoever's singing and the 144,000. We do know that, and if it's them, we still know, it's still the same answer. Whoever's singing, they went through the worst time in human history, period.
It's whenever that scene is that they're standing in front of the throne with the four
Yes.
animals and then the 144,000.
So just think about the 104. Well, go ahead.
After this, the judgment comes.
Yes, in real time, but we're not in real time. We're
Gotcha,
getting preempted
gotcha.
okay, here, let me jump to the future, because you just looked at this horrifying government that's in charge and these terrible people that are doing horrible things. So God, in his sovereignty, puts Jesus' return right there. It doesn't happen yet. We haven't gone through the bowl judgments. We haven't gone through Armageddon, but it's like he's putting this moment of victory and hope, as you said earlier, right there on the heels of this awful government and people that are functioning. Okay, so think about, are they standing with the Lamb in heaven or on earth? What do you think? Why?
Yes.
Yes.
Does it matter?
Well,
Why
it
does it matter?
says that
50-50 chance.
that the Lamb was standing on the mountain with the 144,000.
Yep.
And then it says, I heard a sound from heaven. It never says that they're in heaven.
Exactly.
It says they heard it from heaven.
Yes. They heard it from heaven, and
good one.
they
Good answer.
sing, they can learn the song. Doesn't say they're singing it in heaven. And the other thing, we have no support, because every time, we've heard them 3 times. We have no support for them being martyred. They're talked about as being sealed every time we read about them, including right here in this section. And that sealing is for protection and also for their purpose, in such horrific times. Okay? All right, so when does this take place?
Chapter 19.
In the Bible.
Yeah, but when, yeah. Yep, so at the end, so it's after 3.5 years. From the time the Antichrist walks in, sits down, says, I'm God, 3.5 years have passed, Jesus comes back. We know that, timing-wise, right? Okay, all right, so let's look at the contrast between Revelation 13, 16 and 17, and then 14:1.
Well, I think the contrast is that in 13, people were being marked for the beast, and in 14, 144,000 were marked for God.
And that is the contrast. And then we also, as we read through this chapter more, and what happens to a person who's marked for the beast and worships the beast, what happens to them?
They get to buy food and
They do, but what's their ultimate end?
They're condemned to hell.
They are. Their death. Where these people who are marked, are sealed, have eternal life. And we know that they're believers.
And
Okay?
any believers that are not marked for God as 144,000, they have to choose whether or not to starve or trust
And most-
God to provide for
Right.
them.
And most of those will die.
Yeah.
Most of those will die. Okay, so let's look at verses 4, go to 14, 4 to 5, and we're going to push through the rest of whatever we can get through in this lesson. But let's look at what's also true of this group of 144,000. We're given some details about them, and what do we find?
The virgins
Okay,
says,
Would we say they're men only?
that's a good question, and I think because he says what the phrase that's in there,
They do not defile
They're not
themselves
defiled.
with women.
yes, then I would say yes. But that's the only place. Otherwise, they're called bondservants. They're called they're given a generic. So some people do believe that it's men and women. Okay, but from our standpoint, what is it? What is true of these guys while they're living through those 7 years? What's true of them?
They're virgins.
They're gonna be celibate.
Okay. Now help me.
They follow the Lamb wherever he goes.
C-L-I-B-A-T-E.
What say? Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
C-L-I-B-A-T.
It's I. Okay. Fine. And why is that a significant thing during that time frame?
Because it's less distraction.
It can be less distraction, but
Everything else is corrupt. That just indicates they're not being corrupt.
we're gonna find sexual sin rampant during this time frame. Okay. What else? So what's the next thing that we find out about them?
they follow the Lamb wherever he goes. They've been purchased from among men as first fruits to God and to the Lamb. So does that mean that they're firstborn?
Not necessarily. You mean the first fruits?
Yeah.
Okay, wait just a second. I want to read a couple of verses regarding the follow the Lamb. So you have those verses on there. So let's read John 10. Let's do it this way because it'll be a little bit faster. John 10, 27 and 28. So somebody say I got that.
I got it.
Okay, John 12, 26.
I'll do it.
Psalm 75.
I got that one.
Psalm 46, 10.
I'll do it.
Job 13, 15.
I'll do it.
Okay, so whoever's got John 10, 27 and 28, let's read those two verses.
27 and 28. My sheep listen to my voice. I know them and they follow me. I give them eternal life, and they shall never perish. No one can snatch them out of my hand.
Okay, and what about John 12, 26?
If anyone serves me, let him follow me. And where I am, there shall my servant also be. If anyone serves me, the Father will honor him.
And what about Psalm 70, verse 5?
But as for me, I am poor and needy. Come quickly to me, O God. You are my help and my deliverer. Lord, do not delay.
Okay, how about Psalm 46, 10?
He says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth."
How about Job 13, 15?
Though he slay me, yet I will trust him. Even so, I will defend my own ways before him.
So why did I pick those verses when we talk about them following the Lamb wherever he goes?
They all tie together.
They do tie together.
Well, it's about any follower of Christ. So, all Christians, right?
Yep. And so he is saying all Christians are sealed. All Christians are protected based on those verses. But it's significant because these guys are functioning when? When are they may be sealed. They may be protected. But it doesn't change what?
That they're in the tribulation.
that they are functioning in the tribulation, and they're going through this tremendous hardship during the tribulation. It doesn't change that. And so in their hearts, like our hearts, as we go through challenges here, then we have these verses that were written about in the past, and those verses tell us what we do with the challenges that we face. And what do we see in Psalm 70 verse 5? And what do we see in Psalm 46:10? The deliverance, okay.
That we're protected.
There is the protection, but there's also that crying out to God and saying, we're poor and we're needy. And boy, the challenges during the circumstance is going to strip them of any independence. They're going to be completely dependent upon God to persevere through those 7 years. And what would be the comfort of Psalm 46:10?
That God's in control.
Yeah. Be still and know that I am God. Will they need to be reminded, just like we need to be reminded of those truths? I don't care if they're protected or sealed. They're exposed to all this horror.
Are they gonna know that they're part of 144,000?
It's a really good question.
Know what tribe they're from? Like,
It's a really good question, and we don't know, but we definitely know that they're converted. We definitely know that.
And that doesn't happen until the tribulation.
We don't know when it happens. We
If
don't
they
know,
were- if
but
they
that's
were
when
con-
they're first talked about, is when the 7 years in that
They must
7
know
year time
something
frame.
because they're singing the song and they're learning it from heaven. So how do you?
Yeah, but I mean, from,
I'm just saying though, if they were already converted, they should have been raptured.
Exactly. So
So
it's
they have to-
something that they have been, something that has been communicated to them, some way that God gets the gospel, just like He does to every individual. Somehow God is working to get the gospel into the human heart, and He has a special mission for these people.
But I thought they came about after their tribulation.
Yeah, that's-
during the tribulation.
Yeah, and that's